Hey Nancy Drew fans! We're back for book 43, The Mystery of the 99 Steps. We start with Nancy asking Bess and George to go with her to France. Mr. Drew needs help on a case, and she has a mystery of her own. Mr. Drew calls his the case of the frightened financier. A business tycoon named Mr. Charles LeBlanc has been acting strangely and selling all of his assets. Nancy's neighbor, Mrs. Blair, who lived in France as a child, has been having recurring nightmares, and she asks Nancy to go to France to investigate. This book has many of the elements of some of the best in the series, like an exotic trip, an abundance of action, and a complicated mystery that really tests Nancy's skills. But it never comes together, and I have two major complaints: the ridiculous premise of Nancy's mystery and the truly preposterous action sequences. Mrs. Blair's nightmares sound like they're right out of a French film. She's blindfolded, about to fall down a long staircase, and someone is whispering 99 steps. Yet Nancy and Mr. Drew take the dream so seriously that they decide that a trip to France, including the cost of them and Bess and George, is completely warranted. Everyone that Nancy tells about the dreams, from her friends to the couple that they all stay with outside of Paris, even the French police, unquestionably accept that these dreams are a mystery worth exploring and not just nightmares. And then the action. Starting on page 5, when Nancy is standing in front of a lit fireplace, a helicopter flies over too low and it causes a downdraft, sending ashes and sparks into the room. Later, while clue hunting at Versailles, George is dragged off vaudeville style by a cane around her neck. After a frantic search, she's found unconscious on the bed of King Louis XIV. And the worst example is when an obese woman nearly knocks everyone down the stairs at Notre Dame. Coming down toward her was an enormously fat woman who blocked the entire width of the staircase. Without regard for those below her, she descended swiftly and thoughtlessly, not moving sideways to give Nancy any room. Dismayed, Nancy stood on her toes and tried to hug the wall, which was too flat to give any handhold. "S'il vous plaît," Nancy began. The fat woman paid no attention. She pushed against Nancy so hard that the girl lost her balance. She fell against Bess, who in turn dropped backward onto George. Unable to keep her balance, George desperately clawed the air. Would they all go tumbling to the bottom? Nancy quickly figures out who the bad guys are, even managing to have one of them arrested before she leaves River Heights. In France, she pieces together countless random clues for both her own case and her dad's. But she seems off her game throughout, and she's eventually outsmarted by the remaining bad guy when she leads herself, Bess and George, her dad, and his client into a dangerous trap that they only get out of with the help of local police and brute force. Meals in France include pastry with hot chocolate, a lunch of cheese soufflé, and a dinner of fish stew with plum tarts for dessert. A rare moment of fun, and one of few making fun of Bess moments, comes when Nancy mischievously tries to get Bess to eat steak tartare. "Sorry," said Bess. "I'll stick to good old cream of tomato soup, medium well-done roast beef, potatoes, asparagus, salad, some cheese, and then fruit." George looked at her cousin disapprovingly. "You'll be bursting out of your clothes within 3 days if you eat like that." As a compromise, Bess said she would not have the soup. Next up, the clue in the crossword cipher.